Welcome, everybody. Adeena is coming on right now. And
Hi.
hi, Adeena.
Hello.
Welcome to the Hadassah Magazine Discussion Group, a joint program of Hadassah Magazine and the membership department of Hadassah, the Women's Zionist Organization of America. I'm Lisa Hosting, the executive editor of Hadassah Magazine. The magazine discussion group actually predates the outbreak of the coronavirus, believe it or not, when all our lives pivoted online. We launched last fall as a way to delve a little deeper into the content of the magazine. For those of you who have become regular attendees, welcome back. For those of you joining us for the first time, we're so glad to have you. We hope you'll join us for future Hadassah programming, and we'll provide some information related to that toward the end of the session. We have a really special treat with us today, Adeena Sussman. We have been saving her for a special time since she's our columnist, our food columnist of Hadassah Magazine, the long time. That's one of her claims to fame, although she's become much more famous beyond that in recent years. But what better time than now as we look to Rosh Hashanah and seek a little extra inspiration. So Adeena is a cookbook author, food writer, recipe and product developer, and consultant based in Tel Aviv. She has collaborated on several cookbooks with famous chefs and culinary aficionados, but her first solo book, Sababa, Fresh, Sunny Flavors from My Israeli Kitchen, came out last year to wide acclaim. She has written for many prestigious publications, but as I said, most importantly, we claim her as our own, as the longtime food columnist for Hadassah Magazine. And most importantly, Adeena is a lifetime member of Hadassah.
Yes, I am.
You are. And in her columns, Adeena always provides rich insight to diverse aspects of the Jewish culinary world, not to mention delicious recipes. One of your most recent pieces brought us into the home kitchens during the COVID pandemic of such well-known chefs as Michael Solomonov, Einat Admoni, and Andrew Zimmern. And in the current issue of Hadassah Magazine, once again, you provide us with a timely piece introducing our readers to Michael Twitty, the Black Jewish celebrity chef whose kosher soul combines the different ingredients of his identity. Adeena, you and I were together in person, remember those events? About a year ago in Nassau County in New York. The world has certainly changed dramatically since then in so many ways.
It really has.
It has, but while it would be wonderful to see you in person, this way we get a special perspective talking to you from Tel Aviv, where you've made your home and where so much of your inspiration now happens. So we're going to talk about your journey from the Upper West Side of New York to becoming an Israeli, about Israeli cuisine, and of course we're going to get a cooking demonstration. Everybody would be very disappointed in your kitchen doing something, as you clearly are prepared to do. So welcome, Adeena. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that we will be taking questions, so go ahead and write them in the Q&A section. So Adeena, really, again, we're so happy to have you with us. So
it's like being with family, obviously, so it's so nice to be here. Thank you.
So before we delve into food, I want to start by asking you, how is coronavirus impacting life in Israel right now? We've all pretty shocked and worried to learn just in the last week that Israel has the highest infection rate per capita in the world. And we're hearing reports of potential complete lockdown again. What is going on there? How is your life being affected?
You know, we went from having the best record in the world to the worst in a matter of months. And I think it does speak a little bit to the extremes that life in Israel can present. It's really bewildering and surreal to be in a place that has that unfortunate distinction. But, you know, weirdly, in Tel Aviv, where I live, which has quite a low infection rate, life goes on as normal. I've been renovating my home. I'm living in a rental right now. I've been working on several cookbooks. I've been running all over the city, masked, of course, and keeping social distance, but businesses are open and restaurants are open for outdoor dining. And I think, you know, the timing, unfortunately, with Rosh Hashanah approaching next week and the threat of a closure around the holidays, which is exactly what happened around Passover, is really what's weighing heavily on people's minds, because people in Israel are obviously so family oriented and, you know, making plans to cook meals for 20 and spend hard-earned dollars, you know, that are even more precious than ever in the age of Corona when, you know, about 800,000 Israelis are unemployed. So it's a real yin yang. You know, I think like in the United States, there are times when things can feel very normal, and then you think about the bigger picture and realize what a strange time we're in. So, you know, my thoughts are with everyone in the States. And when I was doing most of my Zooms during the height of the pandemic in New York and Israel was sort of coasting along, I was saying to everyone, my thoughts are with you and I hope that you guys recover. And now I feel like I'm getting those kind of, you know, vibes in return from my friends in the States. So it's definitely a strange time.
Yeah.
But thank you for, but you know.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, the fact that you still don't really know what the situation is going to be, and Rosh Hashanah begins, you know, a week. How are you?
You know, as you know, the government situation here is very fraught, and I think that internal conflict between, you know, different parties, different religious affiliations, different ethnicities definitely add to the situation here. So I think people are really starting, in a way, there's a unifying factor going on now. People are finally rallying and saying, like, enough of all this internecine fighting. Like, we just need to solve this as a nation. So, like, let's just get this handled. So I think that I see that that's what's going to happen. What if that means in a complete closure? I mean, it might mean the end of Bibi Netanyahu for good. Who knows? But you know, I think people just they either want to learn how to live with it or close down completely and eradicate it. So I don't know. I can't say. I wish I knew. I wish I knew what was going to happen.
Right, and certainly a lot of that same uncertainty is here as well. So
yes, of course.
How are you personally planning for Rosh Hashanah at this point? What are you planning to cook?
So, you know, I'm actually leaving for the States right after the holiday to do a cookbook with Chrissy Teigen in Los Angeles for a couple of months. And my husband and I are moving back into our home probably on Erev Rosh Hashanah. So we think we're going to be doing a repeat of Passover where we had a Seder for two on Jay's 60th birthday, which happened to be Erev Pesach. So we may just do a really quiet and low-key holiday. And I think that, you know, this year more than ever, I think we need to allow ourselves to do what we feel is best and safest, healthiest, and easiest for us, you know, while nourishing our souls. So, you know, our children are coming this weekend to be with us, and because who knows what's going to be happening over the holiday. So we're going to cook a simple meal, maybe the first meal I ever cook in my new apartment, maybe the first and last for some time. I keep joking that to my husband that I want to wrap him and the entire new apartment in plastic and unwrap it in December when I come back, so everything is all shiny and new. But so we're just gonna, you know, spend the year being grateful for our health and the prosperity that we have, and probably cooking simply roast chicken, soup, some vegetables, and of course Israel, so a lot of salads. And I do live right next to the shuk, so even in the first closure, I had a lot of produce and resources at my disposal. I was able to, if you were able to go a couple of 100 meters from the home, I was always able to get food. So I'm not too worried.
So even in a lockdown, the shuk is open that you can actually access it?
So, you know, officially the shuk was closed, but there were several, you know, the shuk, for those of you who've been to Israel, there's the main stall of the shuk, and then there are many sort of alleyways and side streets. And technically those are not considered part of the shuk, and some of the vendors stayed open. And people shopped, myself included. You know, I felt like it was safer to go to the shuk than to a supermarket. Personally, I wrote an op-ed for Eater about it back in April because, you know, I could decide who I wanted to patronize, how far back I wanted to stand, what I felt comfortable with. When you go into a supermarket, you know, you're touching a million things. There are a million people in line standing with you. So, you know, I think everyone really has to do what they feel comfortable with, and with which feels safe and within reason. So right now the shuk is open, and there hasn't been any outbreak in the shuk in Tel Aviv. So that's what's going on right now.
Just so everybody's clear, you're in Tel Aviv, so we're talking about the Carmel shuk.
Yes, so I live in the Carmel Market, but Machane Yehuda Market, which many of you have been to, I'm sure as well, is also open. I think one of the reasons that the government is waiting to do a closure is because Rosh Hashanah is just such a high volume business time for all the vendors, and they've suffered so much already with Corona. So, you know, Sukkot in Israel, yes, people observe, but people are out vacationing, traveling. Rosh Hashanah is like the time when everyone's home with family, cooking and buying gifts and doing all that stuff. So I have a feeling that both for the vendors and for the consumers, that they're waiting. We'll see what happens. Tune in on January 22nd. We'll see where we are.
All right, so listen, I know that you're preparing a recipe for us, and I know you need to put it in the oven, so why don't you go ahead and start? You're making...
Sure. So I'm making one of the most popular dishes from Sababa, which was the tahini glazed carrots, or tahina, as we like to call it in Israel. And you know, I think the reason this dish was so popular is because, you know, Sababa's entire goal was to take all the staples of the Israeli kitchen and encourage us to view them and use them in different ways. You know, tahina, we typically think of as something that's mixed with lemon juice and water, and served as sort of a dip, or mixed into hummus, and, you know, or maybe used in halva. But, you know, I think there's tahina in about 30 of the recipes in Sababa out of 125. So about a quarter of the recipes have tahina in them. And, you know, the book is extremely vegetable heavy. It was quite popular with vegetarians. I did a count when the book first came out, and about 70% of the recipes are plant-based. So it's a really good book for people who, you know, are trying to be meat reducers, or a vegetarian, or even vegan. And I've chosen to use multicolored carrots today because they're just so friggin' cute and beautiful. And what I do is, you guys, if you have regular carrots and you want to make them look sort of like gourmet carrots, like take your peeler and shave along the bottom to kind of make it look narrow, sort of like a farm stand carrot. You can kind of fake it a little bit. I have some beautiful purple carrots, which are hybrids of beet and carrot. I've got these sort of white carrots, which are a hybrid of a parsnip and a carrot. And then I have yellow, which I think is a yellow beet and carrot. I personally prefer the taste of just a plain old orange carrot. It has that sweetness and delicious texture. Sometimes the colored carrots are a little tougher. There's something I think about the fusing of the different types of vegetables. So that's why roasting is so helpful here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the carrots, and it's about the recipe calls for about 1.5 pounds of carrots. I can personally, you know, down that in by myself in one sitting. So I would encourage you to increase the number of carrots in the recipe. If the carrots are smaller, you want to take them and maybe just cut them in half. You know, you want, look how beautiful these are on the inside. They're just so gorgeous. These big ones here, I'm going to take and cut in quarters. So I'm going to have them through the center, and then, you know, do that again. And, you know, when it comes to this recipe, if you don't have carrots, you could use sweet potatoes, you could roast beets, you could do this with cauliflower. It's really all about the dressing, you guys. You're going to see how amazing and versatile this dressing is. And, you know, it basically could make a cardboard box taste good. But, you know, it's something. Sorry?
If you're making it, will you make a cardboard box taste good?
Oh, sure. You know, in culinary school, I once accidentally fried a piece of a cardboard box. And only realized it when it was presented to my chef instructor. And luckily he didn't taste that piece. So that was funny. So yeah, so this is, I'm just gonna make quick work of this. And, you know, the more charred you want the carrots to be, the smaller you cut them. Sort of like anything, you know, if you cut garlic into tiny pieces, it's gonna burn faster. If you cut it just in two, it's gonna be fast. So I'm gonna just quickly work my way through these. You know, sometimes I get farm stand carrots. Sometimes I just have plain old supermarket carrots in the fridge, and maybe they're a little bit past their prime. So this is like a great way to, you know, especially during COVID, we really learned you know, about food waste and how essential it was to use absolutely every scrap we have in the house. So roasting vegetables is a great way to do that. I wouldn't encourage using sort of spoiled stuff, but Lisa, I seem to have lost you for a minute, but I'm going to keep going here in the meantime.
Okay, we actually shut off my camera because you're the star here. Everybody wants to be able to.
Oh, good. Oh, okay. Well, I miss seeing your pretty face, but I'm sure you'll be back soon. And if anyone has any questions right now while I'm finishing trimming here, I'm happy to answer a question or two. You know, yeah, so we got these carrots cut now, and basically I'm gonna, you know, I really also like to use as few implements and bowls as possible. So a lot of recipes will tell you to toss the carrots in a bowl with olive oil, salt and pepper. But in Adeena's kitchen, we just put the carrots straight onto our sheet pan here. This is a standard 12 or 13 by 18 inch sheet pan. You want to make sure that you leave a little bit of room. So you kind of sometimes want to play with how you arrange the carrots. In this case here, I'm going to, I sometimes like to do them sideways because I find that I can fit more. And I also like to sort of have some where the tips are in different directions, like that. This is my Israeli olive oil. As you know, Israel has some of the best olive oil in the world. And I keep it in this dark metal pourer because olive oil is extremely sensitive to sunlight and heat, and this helps to keep it fresh and not oxidized. So I'm going to be generous with my olive oil here, and then you can use any salt. Lately I've been using pink Himalayan salt. I really like it. I was not a believer in the fact that, you know, sort of vanity salts have different impacts on flavor, although I do love my Morton's kosher salt. But I really like this Atlantic salt. It has a delicacy to it. It's an even and balanced saltiness. And sometimes kosher salt can be a little bit much. And then I'm going to take some cumin. If you like cumin, use a lot. If you don't, just use a drop. And then I'm going to take a little bit of chili pepper here. This is called marash pepper. It's from Turkey. It's a beautiful bright red color. A lot of times when I'm looking for chili flakes in the supermarket, I'll just look for what is prettiest because, you know, you really sometimes don't know what you're getting unless you're buying your spices from somebody like Lior Sarkaz from La Boite in New York, who's sort of like the Neiman Marcus of spice vendors. You know, you never know how old the spices are or how long they've been kind of sitting around the kitchen. So I like to look, color is often an indication of freshness, especially with chilies. And if your chili flakes are sort of a pale color, it means that they've probably been exposed to a lot of oxygen or sitting in the kitchen for a while. All right, so Lisa, I'm going to get these right into the oven, which I have preheated. You know, the recipe, it could be 375, it could be 400. If you're in a hurry, you could sort of get them started faster. And one of my favorite tricks that I do all the time if I'm in a hurry is I will put my sheet pan on the floor of the oven, because then the heat, the surface heat from underneath comes into direct contact with the sheet pan, and it really caramelizes the underside. So you have to watch it a little more if you do that, but you're really going to achieve some really amazing caramelization and color if you do that. So I'm going to just hop off screen for 1 sec and pop this into the oven, and I'll be right back.
Okay, and while she's doing that, I just want to tell everybody, don't worry, we are going to send the recipe in the thank you note follow-up that will probably arrive in your email tomorrow. For those of you on Facebook who may not be actually registered, it will be on the HadassahMagazine.org website, so we will get it out to you in speedy time, because I know you need it for next week. So,
right, so yeah.
And Adeena, we do actually have a couple questions related to what you're doing.
Sure.
And I'm going to actually come back on.
Okay.
So a couple questions related to the carrots per se. When I buy organic carrots, I do not peel them. Would it make a difference in this recipe?
Israel, it's quite hard to find organic produce, so I almost always do peel. No, I think you could absolutely not peel these. I think you should scrub them well. I find that the peel, you know, obviously has a lot of the fiber and is great and healthy. It can be a little bit bitter occasionally, so giving it a good scrub, yeah, I think you can absolutely leave the skin on, the peel on the carrots. Right. Another thing I often do, by the way, when I peel potatoes or carrots is I toss them in olive oil and I roast them on a sheet pan, and I make like little frizzly chips that I put on salads or on top of a dip or something, like those Terra chips. You can kind of make those at home with all the peels and all the leftovers, which is a really fun thing to do.
Okay, all right. And somebody wanted to also know and I'm curious about this too, because we always talk about this in my family, what kind of knives to use? Like, we know it's important to use
It's a really good question. So it was funny because as we were moving to our rental 2 months ago, I have quite the boutique of knives in my permanent kitchen, but I really wanted to streamline my summer and not bring a lot of stuff from my home, which is a mile away, to our rental here. So I brought a 6-inch Santoku knife, which is the knife that has the sort of ridges in the bottom, which is great for chopping vegetables. As important as your knife is to have one of these at home, which is a honing steel. And a lot of people think it's a sharpening steel, but you need to have your knives professionally sharpened or have a sharpening tool at home. This helps to hone the edge and keep it sharp, but it can't create an edge on a knife. A sharpener knife creates thousands of tiny edges that add up to a really sharp knife. But I often find myself doing this. Sorry if the noise is a little bit grating for some of you, but I do it at about a 45-degree angle, sort of like on both sides, and that keeps my knife nice and sharp. So this is a Wusthof Henckels that I got in culinary school about 15 years ago that I still use all the time. I really like, this is called Lamson Sharp. It was a wedding gift. I just got married 3 years ago, and sort of like an offset spatula. This is an offset knife. So it's really, really fun to hold and cut, and it's serrated. So it's great for cutting tomatoes or cutting bread. And of course it has a gorgeous wood handle. So like it looks beautiful all the time. And then I usually have an 8-inch chef's knife and a paring knife as well. Paring knife is usually a very small knife. The rule is the smaller the item, the smaller the knife. Just looking for my paring knife. I think it's in the dish rack. So I like global brand knives. I don't love Shun knives, which are really popular. They stay very sharp, but they're made out of carbon steel and they tend to oxidize on the ends, and they just kind of look unattractive and never clean. So that kind of just bothers my OCD side. So I tend not to use those. But those are just a few, but there are so many good knives out there. And really the prices have come down on excellent knives, like Victorinox knives, which you can get at Target. Chrissy Teigen's knives, I have to say, although I work with her, they're excellent. They hold their edge really well. Also Misen, which is a brand that you can order online, M-I-S-E-N, very good prices and very good quality.
Okay. All right. Just a couple more questions related to this.
Sure.
Somebody wants to know whether you could use turnips and whether you can use parsnips and carrots together. Basically, you're saying you can use almost anything, right?
Absolutely. Turnips, I love roasted turnips. You know, very chefy to butter roast them. So if you're eating a dairy meal or you're not kosher, you know, using butter to roast is a wonderful thing with turnips, especially. It's very haute cuisine. Radishes and turnips especially, I think what the thinking is that because those vegetables are a little bit more bitter, the butter kind of rounds out the flavor, but a good olive oil will also work. So I think roasting radishes and turnips is really fun and surprising, and something we don't do enough. Also the same thing with kohlrabi, which is a very popular vegetable in Israel that is less available in the States. It's actually in the cabbage family. It's in kohlrabi, to me sounded like some exotic Middle Eastern name, but it's actually German. And it's the one that when it's just pulled out of the ground, it has those crazy fractile stalactites coming out of the top. It looks like a little Martian vegetable. And it has sort of a texture that's kind of a mix between a jicama and a turnip, and very sweet and delicious. So in Israel, people eat them raw in salads, but they're also really, really good roasted. So I think any root vegetable, also acorn squash this time of year and as fall is coming, butternut squash, pumpkin, you know, zucchini, all of it. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's good. There's a lot of variety there.
Yeah.
And one other question, a couple people are asking, we can't really see, did you use parchment paper on the sheet or no?
I didn't. You can use foil or parchment. You're going to get the best caramelization if you just do it straight on the metal. But I often use foil. When I roast tomatoes weekly, if not twice a week, my roasted cherry tomato recipe from Sababa, which to me is almost a non-recipe recipe. It was, again, one of the most popular recipes in the book. And those get, you know, the sugars in the tomatoes really caramelize and sort of can stick to the pan. So I will sometimes use parchment or foil for those. I think you should do whatever makes your cleanup the easiest. I don't recommend using disposable pans, not as a environmental judger, but more just because the heavier the pan, the more even the heat distribution, and you're going to end up with a better end product. So, you know, invest in 1 or 2 good rimmed baking sheets. You can get them at Bed Bath & Beyond, Walmart, Target, obviously online, since a lot of us are shopping online. Some of the brands that I like the most are Chicago Metallic is sort of a classic, and Nordic Ware. And then there's one called USA Pan. And those are really cool because they have ridges on them. They're really pretty and they look sort of old-timey, and they develop like a really nice patina really quickly. So they're kind of fun to use. But so those are 3 brands that I really like.
Great. All right, so we don't run out of time. I want you to go ahead and make the tahini sauce. Okay,
Sure.
I'm going to stop my
All right.
so you'll be a little more, hopefully you're a little bit more full screen, but you can still hear me.
Okay, guys. So again, Adeena cooking is convenience cooking. So we're not going to use a whisk and a bowl. We're going to use a jar to make our dressing. You know, tahini is, I would say, one of the, along with za'atar and olive oil, and there are some other contenders, tahini is really the cornerstone flagship ingredient of Israeli cooking. This brand is called Al Arz, and like most of the most popular tahinis sold both in Israel and abroad, which are from Israel, are made by Palestinians and Arabs and sold to Jews in Israel. And what I love about that is that it's one of those examples of culinary and cultural coexistence that you just don't read about in the paper. You know, everyone has their favorite brand. You know, they try and describe the Arab writing, or if there's a dove on it, or a dog, or whatever the logo is. Al Arz is a really lovely, wonderful company. Actually, this tahina is available in the United States now, and it's run by a mother and a daughter, Lana and Julia, who are Christian Arabs from Nazareth in the north. And they're social activists. They are wonderful people, and it's one of my favorite brands to use because it's a woman-owned company. So when you're buying tahina, you know, when you shake the tahina, you want to hear like a heavy slapping against the roof of the. I'm gonna be quiet for a minute and shake it, and you're gonna hear what I mean. So you hear a heaviness, almost like a pancake batter, like splashing against the top of the jar. If this tahina was separated, you would hear a splash of oil. And I mean, I think if a lot of you are like me, I grew up with the Joyva can, where you would get 2 distinct layers in your tahina. There would be a sludgy, heavy, muddy layer of sesame on the bottom, and then a sort of slick of oil on the top. And you had to use all of your upper arm strength to kind of reconstitute it. You know, tahina is so much more popular now, and so much of the tahina you're buying in the States is exported actually from Israel, that it's fresher, and you're going to find that it's less separated. But if it is separated, you can always stir it back together or put it in the blender with and give it like a quick whirl. So I'm going to show you what the tahina should look like when you pour it in. Again, like we're talking like thick. Oh, the smell is so good. It smells really roasty, toasty, and you'll notice a lot of people will think that regular tahina is actually wholemeal tahina with the hull on the outside, but it's just that tahinas in Israel are roasted really deep because it brings out so much of that incredible sesame flavor. All right, so I'm going to pour the tahina into this jar, and you're going to see a real thickness here. There's not nothing watery about it. I'm going to sort of, if you swirl it around, it should stick to the sides of the jar. And tahina is very much like chocolate. If any of you have ever cooked with baking chocolate, you've noticed that if you add 1 drop of water at the wrong temperature, all the chocolate is going to seize up, and then you end up having to add more warm liquid to sort of loosen it up. Tahina and chocolate are actually extremely similar in their molecular makeup, and they're comprised of thousands of tiny individual molecules that drink water. So when you introduce liquid to it, everything's going to seem fine at first, and then it's going to sort of stiffen up, and then as you add more liquid, everything loosens up again. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're working with tahina. I'm going to juice some lemons here. I go through probably 30 lemons a week in the house between salad dressings and, I don't know, cocktails. We do like our cocktails around here. It is lime season, and I'm using a lot of limes in Israel right now, but I feel like lemons really are just the classic choice for this dressing. I'm using a 10 shekel juicer with a little top. I have a really hardcore juicer back in my house, the same one that's used at all of the juice stands in Tel Aviv, but we decided not to schlep it over for the summer. And you know, Israel is a country of lemon. My husband, when I first moved here, just told me he didn't really like vinegar that much, and you know, he's been living here for 35 years, although he's American, and I think he's right. You know, vinegar is considered an acid of foreign cuisines in Israel. And this is such a hot, sunny climate where we like our sunny, spicy, acidic flavors. And that acid almost always comes in the form of lemon juice here. So I'm gonna go ahead and add lemon juice to this jar.
And while you're doing that, Adeena, there are a couple questions that I want to make sure we get.
Sure.
First of all,
Absolutely.
how long can you keep tahina in the refrigerator?
So first of all, tahina is a shelf-stable product that, if kept out of the sun in a cool pantry, can last for a year. You don't need to refrigerate tahina. The only reason you need to refrigerate tahina is if you accidentally introduce some liquid into the jar, because that will instantly have it start its deterioration. So like honey, which lasts indefinitely, tahina doesn't last indefinitely, but it actually doesn't need to be refrigerated. And the reason that I don't refrigerate mine is because then you have to sort of cool it down to room temperature. Otherwise it's not its natural viscosity and texture, and you don't really know what you're working with. So I tend to keep mine, and I wouldn't want to microwave it or anything, because when you introduce heat to sesame seeds, it just makes them bitter. So I tend to keep mine in the shelf. You can keep it if you keep it in the fridge and don't touch it, you could probably last for 3 years. If you keep it in the shelf on the pantry, in a unrefrigerated, I would say about a year. But if you use Sababa a lot, you're not going to get through a jar of tahina in a year. It's going to take you a lot less time. Just one more thing about sesame seeds. Almost 100% of the tahina made in Israel is made with Ethiopian sesame seeds from Humera, which is a really fertile region in Ethiopia that produces the best sesame seeds in the world. And Israelis are the #2 per capita consumers of sesame seeds in the world after China because of tahina. And there's an entire sesame seed stock market in Israel, and political volatility in Eritrea and Ethiopia really impact the price of sesame seeds here and the price of tahina. So it's one of those examples of an ingredient that has geopolitical implications for what we eat on our plate here. There's a great tahina company in the States called Soom, which some of you may be familiar with. It's 3 lovely sisters. They're based in Philly. And that company started because one of the women, Jackie Zeidelman, married Omri Hurwitz, who is a sesame seed broker. And they decided to start their own sesame seed tahina company called Soom. And you can order their tahina on Amazon, and it's one of the best. It's made in Nablus, otherwise known as Shechem, in the West Bank, imported to America. Excellent, excellent quality. So that's another one to check out. All right, I'm adding Ceylon now to my dressing. Ceylon, also known as date honey or date syrup, is nothing more than medjool dates, which are Israel's prized, fudgy, sugary, rich, tender dates that are boiled with water for several hours until a very thick, syrupy liquid is formed, and then it's strained out. And when you're buying Ceylon or date honey, which is much more easily available in the States now, you want to look for a pure Ceylon. You don't want something that has any corn syrup or sugar in it, or preservatives or citric acid or anything like that. So just look for pure Ceylon or date honey. Soom also sells date honey that is excellent, excellent quality. So that's another thing that I would encourage. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to this dressing here, probably about 2 tablespoons. I'm going to add water. You definitely need water because the tahina is extremely thick. I'm going to start with about a 1/4 cup of water. And then I'm going to season with some salt. And I'm going to just give it a little pre-stir with a spoon before I shake it, just because the tahina is a little bit on the bottom. Just trying to make sure everything is perfect for you guys, but I think I like where this is going to go. So I'm shaking, and as I shake, I feel the dressing thickening in the jar. I'm going to now take the spoon, and I'm going to oh, it's so thick. It's amazing what just happened. So this is the new texture. This might even be a hair thick. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to taste it, and I'm going to see which element I want to sort of enhance. Maybe I want it a little more sweet, a little more lemony, a little more olive oil. So I'm going to take a tasting spoon here and give that a little taste. Really good. it's tasting a little bit more like tahina dip to me. So I'm gonna add a little more water and a little more silan to add sweetness. And then I'm gonna shake it again. And I think that we should have our desired texture. Now you guys, it's Rosh Hashanah time, so I'm gonna just actually gonna run off screen here for a second, have a, oh here, yeah, so that's much better. I'm hearing like a nice, like liquidy, yeah. So now I have a lovely pourable dressing, which is really what I want. And this will last you in the fridge for a good 2 weeks. You know, you can use this on grilled chickens, meat, fish as well. It's also great as a salad dressing. You could thin it out with a little more lemon juice and olive oil if you want to make a salad dressing with it. I'm just going to go check on the carrots for 1 second. I'll be right back. Those are looking excellent. So I was thinking, you know, because it's Rosh Hashanah, like what can we sort of do to gild the lily here? You know, you maybe you're having your family over, or maybe, so I decided, you know, today I'm gonna put the carrots like on a little bed of butter lettuce. So I'm just gonna take some hydroponically grown butter lettuce that I sometimes don't wash in Israel. You can do as you choose. And I'm gonna put it out on a platter. And then because it is Rosh, let's try and use some of our simanim, our symbols of Rosh Hashanah. So I have some pomegranates here, and I thought I would show you my preferred method for cutting a pomegranate. So it's early in the season here. One of the things I love about Israeli produce is that in the States, when you ask people, you know, when you ask the farmer's market, when are the pomegranates at peak season, they'll say, oh, around October. Here they'll say around Rosh Hashanah. And there's a really great connection all year round between the Jewish holidays and when things are ripe. So we're approaching Rosh Hashanah in about 9-10 days. And pomegranates are getting redder and redder by the day. And I'm sure you've all had a little bit of a stain situation with pomegranates. So what I like to do is I take the pomegranate and I submerge it in water. And then I'll sort of cut through the middle, and I can already see some of the red liquid coming out. And then underwater, I'm separating the pomegranate. So the water is already like a lovely pink color. And I see that this is a gorgeous, you know, sort of like roulette. You never know what pomegranate you're gonna get. There's kind of like a watermelon, you never really know. But this one looks quite lovely. And what I do is I open the pomegranate underwater, and that way the seeds sink to the bottom and the white pith all kind of floats to the top. And I just thought it would be really nice to garnish the carrots today with some fresh pomegranate arils or pomegranate seeds. Now, you know, I'm sure a lot of you have the Ottolenghi cookbooks. And when I was writing Sababa, I really wanted to keep it simple so that you would make these recipes. And, you know, I've been really gratified by, I think, tens of thousands of photos that people have uploaded to Instagram and Facebook of things that they've made. And I think one of the reasons is because the carrots are simple. They don't have anything on top. That doesn't mean that you couldn't put a little chopped apple on top for Rosh Hashanah or some pomegranate seeds. So I just thought today to be festive, especially because we're looking for reasons to, you know, brighten up our days in these challenging times, that there's nothing like the look of a jewel-like pomegranate seed to just make any dish look beautiful. So I peeled, I think half is more than enough here. So I'm gonna take this out here, and I think our carrots are probably just about ready. Lisa, does anyone have any other questions in the meantime?
Are you kidding me? There are 80 questions in our.
Let's go. We got time. We got time. The carrots can go a little bit longer. So let's go.
So much information. I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm going to try to combine a couple. Forget my questions. I mean, I had a whole list of questions, but we're going to go with the audience here. Okay. First of all, people want to know what brand of tahini. You mentioned two. Can you actually?
Okay. Sure. I'm going to give you guys all you need to know about tahini. So Soom is S-O-O-M, like Mary. So Soom in Hebrew is sesame seed. So Soom is one of the brands. All R's, which is A-L, and then A-R-Z as in zebra, is the one that I told you about that's run by Lana and Julia, mom and daughter. Available on Amazon. And then there's a third one that's also readily available called Har Bracha, which means blessed mountain It's H-A-R space and then bracha, like blessing in Hebrew, B-R-A-C-H-A. And that one is really interesting because it's made by a Samaritan Palestinian community who lives in the West Bank. That is currently the reigning trendy tahina in Israel, used by chefs and home cooks alike. And I think it's because it's pre-salted. So, you know, there are some old laws in Israel where now, because of environmentalism, the water waste from processing sesame seeds creates tens of thousands of gallons of water every month. And old methods of removing the hull from the sesame seed was to soak the sesame seeds in salt water, which sped up the process of removing the outer shell from the inner part of the sesame seed. And then that was run through a centrifuge, and then all that water, salt water waste was just kind of discarded, you know, out into the sewage, and it caused a lot of environmental damage. So now there are new laws, but these older companies like Al-Arz and Harbracha are grandfathered into old laws that allow them to continue to salt the sesame seed water. And it's almost like you're getting a pre-seasoned pure tahini paste, and it's really next level. So you could definitely check out one of those two, but Soom is a little bit more neutral on the salt, but equally good because it's roasted really well and because they obviously use really, really good quality sesame seeds.
Okay, I'm going to come back and join you too, so I can actually see you and you can see me in our conversation.
Sure.
Okay, several
Okay.
people also are asking about whether you have a particular brand of olive oil from Israel.
So my favorite is Sindanaya. Sindanaya is made by a cooperative of Arab and Jewish women. No, sorry, it's an Arab-run company that supported Arab Israeli women in the north. And they make beautiful oil that you can also find in the States. It's spelled Sindanaya. So that's a really good one. Of the Israeli ones, it's really hard to find really good Israeli olive oil. They tend to export most of it to Europe or sell it domestically. There is one brand, I'm gonna have to, it's escaping me right now, but by the end of the class, I will get it to you. Now, you know, Israel, you know, one of the main sort of tenets of modern Israeli cooking is, you know, cook what's local. And, you know, what happened with this modern Israeli food is that, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, the hallmark of a great chef here was somebody who could cook amazing French food, amazing Italian food, amazing Spanish food, amazing continental food. And then the world opened up and the internet came about, and Food Network and Food TV and all those influences caused the world to open. Israel became a wealthier country, and Israelis started traveling around the world and eating and wanting all the tastes of the entire world. And young chefs went to work in Michelin star restaurants all over the world. So I think they went thinking they would come back bringing, you know, French, Italian, and Spanish food to Israel. But what they realized, they were getting there at a time when these European chefs were focusing on local cuisine, going to the farmer's market, taking what was growing locally and seasonally, and turning it into really fresh food that had local subtle influences. And Israeli chefs kind of looked around and said, hey, wait a minute, we have some of the best goat cheeses in the world. We have incredible olives and olive oil. We have amazing wines. We have incredible produce. Like, I want to go home and do this myself. So that's, and tahina and all those ingredients, pomegranate molasses, date syrup, all these things that are just such a part of the tapestry of Israeli cooking. You know, they came back and they, you know, olive oil was a big part of that. You know, Israel always had good olive oil, but people kind of took it for granted, kind of like they took for granted that a lime was a seasonal fruit, or that you can't get an avocado all year here in your sandwich. You know, there's a culture here of really appreciating what's in season because it's ephemeral. And, you know, when limes are in season here, I will buy literally hundreds and juice them and freeze them in ice cube trays and put them in the freezer so that I have lime juice all year, because I love lime juice. You know, and Israelis are starting to really like lime juice because so many Israelis travel to Southeast Asia and crave that lime flavor that comes in Thai food and Vietnamese food and other foods. And also as cocktail culture here becomes more sophisticated in all those flavors, and that there are tens of thousands of workers from Philippines and Thailand and Vietnam and Eritrea and Sudan, all those influences from all those different countries are coming to bear on Israeli food. Like I brought out these Thai bird chilies, you know, 5 years ago, you could never, I mean, and these are hard to find in the States. You know, I can find these a block from my house in the Carmel Market, where there's an amazing market filled with Asian produce. And, you know, these Thai bird chilies are super hot, and chefs are using them in their soups, and home cooks are learning to cook with them. I'm just going to go grab the carrots because I think they're ready, but we can let them cool off and take some more questions.
Okay, good. And while you're getting the carrots, think about this, because you're making a really interesting point about how Israeli cuisine shifted when people kind of went local. But what's been so interesting also in the last several years is how Israeli cuisine has reached out into the world. You know, chefs like Michael Solomonov and people who have restaurants. I mean, his restaurant here in Philadelphia, where I live, Zahav, was literally named the #1 restaurant in the entire country a couple of years ago. So what?
It's actually the reigning champion, because the James Beard Awards were canceled this year. So it's still the reigning champion.
Right. And so there are so many others that you've written about for the magazine and else. So
yeah.
So how do you explain that, the fact that Israeli cuisine is now reaching out back into the world and making such a splash?
I think it makes total sense when you think about Israel as a startup nation. It's a country of gutsy, entrepreneurial people who are really willing to throw things against the wall and see what sticks. They have a lot of chutzpah. They have tons of education. You know, most of the people working here as chefs, unlike in the States where the great chefs, many of them didn't go to college and just started cooking at 15. A lot of the people who cooked here did the army, which is another factor that, you know, instills discipline in people and teamwork. And toughness, and resilience. You know, all these things about Israeli culture have really allowed people to sort of, and also I think cooking is a sort of a form of hasbara for Israelis who are often frustrated with the way that Israel is portrayed in the news. So, you know, people in the States think of Israel, you know, until 10 years ago, they may be thinking about, you know, bombs and terrorism. And now they're thinking about shakshuka and fresh pita, you know. And I think that, you know, even myself, I really view Sababa as sort of my contribution to sharing like a different view of Israel than what people see in the news. And I think that that is a big part of Israeli pride manifesting itself in different ways. But from a culinary perspective, I think, you know, every cuisine kind of has its moment. And I think that Israeli cuisine has gone from a moment to sort of a movement. Like it's many of the dishes and staples of the Israeli kitchen are becoming part of the regular cooking canon of millions of people in the States. I mean, you can get a shakshuka kit at Trader Joe's. You know, who would have thought that 5 years ago you could get a shakshuka kit at Trader Joe's? You can get bamba, you know, the child peanut snack at Trader Joe's. You can get harissa, preserved lemons, slug, which is my favorite Yemenite hot sauce, in the refrigerator case at Trader Joe's. So, you know, I think people see these spicy flavors, they see them as, you know, healthy, vegetable forward, not a lot of meat if you don't want it. Tahina is a superfood. You know, there's alternative sweeteners like pomegranate molasses and date syrup. So I think that it touched upon many zeitgeists that were going on sort of and floating at the same time, as the food itself is just so damn delicious and appealing. Like it's really hard to resist. So, you know, and people like Michael Solomonov and Einat Admoni really were early ambassadors for Israeli food in the United States. But even, you know, people like the wonderful Joe Nathan and Jana Gore, you know, have been banging the drum for a long time. I just think that, you know, like many things, it took a younger generation of chefs to introduce this food to a new audience. And kind of that's where we stand. And I'm so fortunate to be a part of this, you know, of all these books. I'm an American woman living in Israel. So Michael, Einat, Alon Shai, they all live in the States, and they're writing about Israeli food as restaurant chefs living abroad. I'm a home cook living in Israel. So that was sort of how I decided to approach Sababa, and really decided that that may be what I could lend to the conversation about Israeli food and add something new, because I really struggled with, I didn't want to just put out another book with all the same staples and standard recipes. I really wanted every page to feel useful and exciting and interesting. So that was kind of how I approached the book.
Yeah, so interesting. And obviously you are making a very important contribution from that perspective.
Thank you so much.
And so tell us, and actually several people have asked this question, which I've asked you before too, and I think it's an important one. So you name the book Sababa, which means awesome. When it's loose. You know, this was over a year ago, so of course things may have been a little bit different than in our current times, but how does it reflect, what was it you were trying to say with that title, and how does it reflect kind of who you are and what you're doing, particularly in these times?
So, you know, Sababa is one of those words. First of all, Sababa is originally an Arab word, Sababa, which in Arabic is actually, I learned after or as the book was coming out, it's quite a high Arabic word, very literary and floral. That means sort of the highest form of love. And Israeli Jews who knew the word from their home countries and people who just were listening to Arab speaking Hebrew kind of adapted it and took it on as a slang word. I mean, the joke in Israel is that like all the best slang words in Israel are Arabic. So Sababa, you know, it rolls off the tongue easily. It has so many meanings. It's a catch-all. It means kind of like everything's cool. It's an agreement. It's a compliment. It's a rating. It's all about sort of inflection and how you say things like, how was your lunch? Sababa, or Sababa, you know, or I'll meet you on the corner of, Allenby Street and the Shook at 10:30, Sababa, you know, or it's sort of like a compromise agreement word. And I just, for me, I wanted a word that was Hebrew, that was easy for people to pronounce, and that sort of touched upon the fun aspect of Israeli cooking and food, and a word that every generation uses and continues to use in Israel. It's not, the word has kind of, it's here to stay. There are other sort of superlatives like that have come and gone, like chaval al hazman, which means like, it's actually a negative thing, which means it's a waste of your time. That was turned around to mean it's a positive thing. That's not a waste of your time, but that's gone. You know, eser, the number 10, to describe something that's amazing. But Sababa is kind of, I think it's here to stay, and I'm so glad that I chose it, because I mean, now there are t-shirts that say Sababa in the Carmel Market. So that's really fun. It's a walking advertisements for the book.
Right, absolutely. You sure you didn't pay them off to do that, to make those?
By the way, everyone, if you're interested in buying the book, it's very well priced right now on Amazon. It's $20, which is the lowest it's ever been. And I don't know how long it's going to last. So it's a good time to buy a copy or a gift if you want one. The list price is $35. I also, of course, support local bookstores, and most of my events on my book tour were at local bookstores. So if you can run out and get one there too. But if you're not going out and you want to get the book quickly, that's a good place to get it right now.
And I highly
agree
also.
So I just want to show you the carrots.
Okay.
All right, guys. So as you can see, there's a beautiful roast that has happened here. The underside is there. This is exactly what you want. You want them to be bendy, but not droopy. Like there's still a little life in this carrot here. It's not a tzimmus carrot. It's a roasted carrot that still has some bite in it. And these to me are absolutely perfect. I'm going to hold them up again just so you can see all the different roasting stripes on there. Some of it's darker than others. They smell wonderful because of the spices. Of course, you can vary the spices. You could use coriander. You could use, pepper. You could use cinnamon. You can use anything you want, really. Any spice that you like.
How long did you actually bake them? Roast them? How long did you roast them?
So I upped the temperature a little bit today, and I did them for about 18 to 20 minutes on about 400.
Okay.
It also depends on how hot your oven is, how thin you cut the carrots, how crowded they are together on the pan. But, about, I would say 375 to 400 is the right temperature. And don't be afraid of a little char. Like that's really the deliciousness. That's caramelization. That's what's called the Mueller effect, which is the sugars in the product kind of caramelizing on themselves and creating this incredible crust that also has amazing flavor. Are we good on time?
We're going to even go over about 5 minutes, which I almost never do.
Okay.
But again, there are a couple of good questions.
Okay.
I want to make sure.
Should I plate this before make sure people get the satisfaction of seeing the plated dish while I answer a question?
Or while you're talking, if you can multitask, which I'm sure you can.
Oh, I certainly can. Yes, I can.
We're all good at that. So a couple of people, first of all, they wanted to know the spelling of the date, honey, which is it's S-I-L.
It's S-I-L-A-N, Ceylon.
Okay.
And, look for that at Middle Eastern markets and at, better supermarkets like Whole Foods. All right, see you guys, these are so beautiful on top of this lovely bed of lettuce. And now I'm going to just take a little bit of the dressing. Okay. And I'm happy to answer more questions while I dress.
Okay, and people back to the Ceylon, people do want to know if you can substitute regular honey.
Oh yes, you can use maple syrup, you can use honey. In a pinch, you could use molasses, which has some similarities to Ceylon, but it's a little more sulfuric and less sweet. Okay, so guys, you see I did a nice drizzle on there, got this beautiful sauce. And now while I answer another question, I'm just gonna sort of gild the lily here with some beautiful pomegranate seeds that I'm keeping cold in this water. So just going to do that. And
is that dinner in your house tonight? Part of dinner in your house tonight?
You know, I'm working on recipes. I'm working on the follow-up book to Sababa. It's called Shabbat, and it's all about how Israelis cook on weekends, both modern Sababa style and traditional dishes. So I made some really good meatballs last night, and we've been snacking on those, but I think this will be our dessert. So here, just to show you guys with the beautiful pomegranate and the tahina, and you saw how easy it was, everyone. You know, there are no secrets here, nothing to complicate this recipe.
Right. Well, that's important for a lot of us who are not the experts that you are.
And obviously, I did it quickly, but you know, you can make the dressing the day before. You can buy pre-seeded pomegranate arils. You can peel the carrots and keep them in water. You know, you can, this is the kind of dish, a lot of the dishes in Sababa can be prepped over a day or over 2 days, you know, if you're pressed for time.
Right, absolutely. So I'm just looking to see if there are any, you know, people are of course raving about Sababa. Lots of
thank you.
Actually, somebody from South Africa who said,
wow,
Cape Town wants to know where she can buy it, but I'm sure Amazon is probably possible there too. One person
yes.
Whether you have a favorite Rosh Hashanah challah recipe that she loves, your olive oil challah recipe in Sababa, but she's wondering if you have any other suggestions.
Yeah, so if you go over to the Jewish Food Society website, it's an organization on which I sit on the board, and they preserve and celebrate traditional family recipes from all over the world. And a wonderful Persian chef here named Rotem Lieberjan just published a Rosh Hashanah menu that has like a candied, like a quince stuffed challah, which just seems so incredible. If you want just like a regular delicious challah, I love Uri Chef's recipe in the Bread's Bakery book. Also, there's a new cookbook out that Hadassah wrote about by Danielle Renoff, Peas, Love, and Carrots. And I made her recipe a couple of weeks ago and really liked it. It's a little bit lighter than Sababa. It has a lot more sugar in it, which I think is nice for the holiday. And it's very fluffy and sweet. And she puts vanilla in her dough. So it gives it like a nice festive cakey feeling, which is really nice for the holidays. So I recommend that one as well.
Awesome. Okay. And first of all, there is going to be a recording of this, so people will be able to find it
great.
on the website. I don't know if it's possible to put in the chat section the actual link, but it is on the Hadassah website, and will be for sure in the next day or two. So take a look at that, and we'll be able to share that. So Adeena,
also I wanted to say, if there are questions that went unanswered, if you want to send them to me, I'm happy to answer them and send them to you, that you can post them.
Oh, that would be great.
You want to pick some of them.
Maybe we can capture the Q&A, because as I said, we're now up to 99 questions. So I have to say,
wow.
Just 1,000 people on Zoom with us today. And
thank you guys so much.
I don't know exactly how many on Facebook, but I'm sure there were several, I'm sure it was significant as well, which is just a tribute to you and the work that you do. So, and the connection that you give us all with Israel, which of course is important to all of us connected with Hadassah. So I want to really thank you so much for that. I also I want to tell everybody that if you've enjoyed our discussion today and you're not yet a member, please consider becoming one today. That also link is in the chat box right now. We'll also be posting it in a slide at the conclusion of the program. You'll get regular notices about all our online programming, including future magazine discussion groups. We've had lots of wonderful ones, and obviously this is the latest. You'll also learn about our newly launched One Book, One Hadassah National Book Club. You'll learn about informative webinars on all sorts of topics, from virtual tours of Israel to Hebrew lessons to resilience and relaxation sessions. We've got it all. Annual membership is only $36 and includes many benefits, including a subscription to Hadassah magazine. So we really encourage you to follow up that way. And if you are a member, which I know many of you are, consider making a donation in support of these programs. Your support enables Hadassah to continue providing programs like this, and also it enables Hadassah's vital work supporting women in healthcare in the United States, in Israel, and around the world. So again, information on how to connect and donate are in the chat box now, and we'll put up a slide in a second. So lastly, I want to let you know that our next One Book, One Hadassah selection has been made. That is our national book group that we launched in June, I believe. We will be reading the widely acclaimed Other People's Pets, which is a quirky, touching, and richly imaginative debut novel about the bonds of love and obligation between generations, told through the lens of a highly unusual protagonist, a young woman who's both a burglar and a veterinarian in training. So that's going to be very fun. Our One Book event, when we launch these discussion groups that we also encourage around the country, but we have a event similar to this, that will be on October 22nd at 7 p.m. when I will interview the author, R.L. Mazes. So registration for that is also going to be in the chat box and will be on the concluding slide. So finally, I want to thank Libby Barnea, our deputy editor, who works closely with Adeena on all things food for Hadassah magazine and who helped plan this program, and to Jenna Frischheim, who works behind the scenes always for our programming to ensure that it all goes so smoothly. Thank you so much. And again, of course, a big thank you to Adeena for spending time with us today, giving us that rich insight into the cultural foodie side of Israel, and of course, for sharing a recipe that I'm sure many of us are going to want to follow up with. So as we approach the high holidays, I want to wish you all a very safe, healthy, and sweet Shana Tova. We're all looking toward a better new year for all. Goodbye, Adeena, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Shana Tova.
Okay, now I got to run out for my